the critical thing always to protect yourself is look at the source, look for credibility, look for credentials, and always be open to listening to critics and former members. And if you're in a group that says, don't ever listen to ex-members or critics, automatically you should be going, that's information control. I'm an intelligent human being. Let me hear what the critics and former members have to say, and I'll decide for myself whether or not that has validity or not.
This is why I say when I was in Fox News, I was in a cult. And it's not to say it wasn't a real cult, but there were cultish elements in that once you leave, you are otherized. That is it. You don't leave. Like once you're out, you are banished. You're shunned. And when I was there, it was all about the reverence to dear leader, who was Roger Ailes, who ran that place with an iron fist and would absolutely be telling you not to listen to anything the libs said. That was his political bias, but also there was something different about it. And just the way, like, the people would talk about Roger, I hear remnants of it when I hear stories about Scientology, about how, well, Roger approves of this. Well, Roger likes that. Well, Roger thought this, as if he was this deity that somehow had, greater divine knowledge than the rest of us. And so where do you draw the line between, well, they just loved the guy because he was a genius and he built a really powerful news organization, and this is getting culty, right? Like I still don't know exactly where that line is.
So it's a really important point. I just put up on my podcast an interview with a leadership professor of business about Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos, and he did a journal article talking about corporate cults and the qualities to evaluate. And it comes back to the charismatic figure who cannot be criticized, who is held up and not accountable, not transparent, doesn't apologize and say that they're wrong, but the control of behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions in order to make people dependent and obedient. And so to stay in your job, you need to adopt the corporate identity, keep your thoughts to yourself, and follow the rules, or be ostracized and criticized. And that's the opposite of healthy corporations and healthy groups, where they want dissent. They want to hear other points of view. The leaders, if they screw up, they say sorry, and they really make policy changes. But if you're an authoritarian, you want total power and control.
Well, the NBC might be a cult too, because they didn't want opposite points of view from what they're, that's a news problem. That's a media bias problem.
The important thing about my work is I'm against authoritarianism on the left and the right. I want human rights for all. I want to support human rights, women's rights, gay rights. I want people to be free to think and not just conform and follow in lemming-like fashion whatever they're being told.
I would say my own experience, and this may be one of the reasons why I'm so interested in this subject, is it took years after leaving Fox for really that second skin to come off. You know what I mean? It took a long time. Even to be honest with you, I was a knee-jerk defender of Fox News for a long time. Like, no, they didn't. No, that you're wrong. Well, don't criticize them like that. Well, that's not true. And to this day, I have some fear in criticizing them because I was there for some 14 years. Like, I have a bit of a emotional hangover from these problems.
So this is a really important point that you make. And when I talk about the BITE model, and the E is emotional control includes feeling awe and reverence and feeling special and chosen, but mostly it's about fear and guilt. And the universal mind control technique is what I call phobia indoctrination, which is the inculcation of irrational fears that if you ever leave the group or criticize the leader, terrible things are going to happen to you. And the way to get out of phobia programming is to think back who you were before you got involved, and to use your critical frontal cortex to evaluate what's an actual danger where you should have fear and what's an irrational fear. And I deal with traffickers, sex traffickers, pimps, as well as labor traffickers. And unfortunately, with some of these criminal enterprises, people should be afraid of speaking out against them because they can be harassed or harmed physically. But most religious cults, most cults, I would say, in the United States, it's a psychological imprisonment. And why it took time for you is time brings perspective through experiences outside of the totalist environment. The more contact you have with normal people and other frames of reference. And also, I would suspect your interest in Scientology and NXIVM and other things, that gave you some tools to start thinking and getting perspective on Fox, would be my guess.
No, I remember I was at NBC. We were covering NXIVM. I was up neck deep on that story. And I was doing an interview on what a cult is and what are the defining characteristics. And I said on camera, oh my God, I was in a cult. It was the aha moment.
I think I watched that interview, actually.
Yeah. It was, and truly, I don't mean to be completely, this isn't my cult hangover, but I don't mean to be completely disparaging of this place that gave me all these opportunities and I made a lot of money there. But it's more than just a normal news organization. There's just no question about it. And it's not that, and the more is not healthy. So